Yep, this video is massive. When I started writing this script, I had no idea it was going to be this big. No idea at all. It's been suggested to me a few times now that I split this into multiple videos, not just to make this content less intimidating for you, the viewer, but for better monetization for me as well. I have refused. There's a reason this video is the way it is. There's a reason why I've spent the last several days just writing, to the point where my poor fingies are stiff and sore, and they still hurt, man. There's a reason why I've spent so much time just researching and thinking. It's because this isn't just another video. It is, in my opinion, the most important Destiny video I will ever make. This video is a debate, specifically designed to be a debate ender. It's overkill, it's in depth, and at times it is harsh. But it is also a work of passion. As much as I can sound negative, or I can be brutally honest, I love and adore the Destiny franchise, and I will always be grateful to Bungie and its writers for giving me their world to enjoy. And to you, my friends, the people who have watched me all this time, and to the people who helped blow the channel up, this video is a thank you and an offer of gratitude from me to you. But going back to the size of the video, it's really as simple as this. From now on, if somebody challenges my beliefs about the Winnower and Unveiling, this video is where they will be sent. I will not give you a 3-part video series and have you watch part 1, make up your mind, and then act like you know why I'm wrong. My entire argument is in this one video, and so if you care about the lore and you care about being as educated and well-informed as possible, then you have two options. Watch the video or don't. You can take breaks, you can watch it over multiple days, or you can just binge it. I really don't mind. But unless you have watched the video in its entirety and you can offer valid counterpoints, I consider the debate about Unveiling to be over. But yeah, that's enough stalling. Let's begin. Unveiling. For those of you who have no idea why this one lore book is so contentious, let me tell you why. You have this character called the Winnower, that's what we call them, and there are two groups of people, those who believe the character is real and those who don't. But here's the thing, both groups use the same lore book as evidence that they're right. You see the issue now. We have a lore book whose correct interpretation can drastically affect how we see the Destiny universe, and many people have many different ideas of what that correct interpretation is. Take me, for example. I made those last 2 videos about how Bungie handled the last 3 expansions, and about the future beyond the final shape. And under both videos, I had several comments saying, there is no Winnower. Unveiling is all fake. The Witness wrote Unveiling. The Witness is the Winnower, etc. People care enough about this topic to comment about it. I read those comments, and I knew what I needed to do. So I went and I did my research, I looked at arguments from both sides, and I have reached my official conclusion. Now, I do my best to be as clear and as easily understandable in my videos as possible, but I'm going to give you a heads up. In this video, I'm going to go all in. I'm going to be as thorough, as in-depth, and as accurate as I can be. If I end up confusing you, I apologize. If I end up going past the limits of your attention span, I apologize. And so I humbly ask that for a question and mystery as big and as important as this, that you give me your patience and time, and that you watch until the end of the video. Don't read the comments, close off your other tabs. Listen, I know that you have like 5 tabs open, just get rid of it. Okay, thank you. And give this your full attention. I believe it's worth it. But with all of that being said, let's get into it. Allow me to present you the topic, Unveiling, in its literal interpretation. Unveiling is a lore book that we got at the end of Shadowkeep. It is from a character we call the Winnower, and in this book, the Winnower explains the origins of the light and darkness, and also the Destiny universe. After that, the Winnower explains why they are right, and the Gardener is wrong, before giving their ultimate pitch. I am right, this is why, and even if you disagree, I'm still going to win. Please join me, it would make my victory even better. You can accept or deny my offer when I arrive and meet you. That is the book. That is all you need to know. So what is the issue? Well, in-game, we have never even seen these characters or heard other characters talk about them. What this means is that if, in the final shape, the Gardener and Winnower show up or are mentioned, they will effectively shock a large percentage of the Destiny player base, specifically those who don't know the lore. And so, for many, the idea that these mythical characters are existing the whole time and are just going to show up at the end, it's ridiculous. At the same time, we already have our big bad, the Witness. It was introduced in Shadowkeep and is the ultimate threat that we'll face in the final shape, ending the Light and Darkness saga. Where on earth would a Winnower even fit into all this? Then, in Season of the Deep, we got a cutscene about how the Witness was made. Asa, that beautiful beluga, said that the race wanted a Winnower and so made the Witness. Therefore, the Witness is the Winnower, and more likely than not, the Witness wrote Unveiling as a religious text and propaganda. And to top it off, senior narrative person Robert Brooks said, and I quote, "Welcome to the problem that all Bible scholars have trying to figure out what may or may not have happened and lining that up to actual historical events." And this was said by senior narrative director Robert Brooks. Unveiling is a parable. It is effectively a religious text. And how much of that is propaganda, how much of that is myth, and how much of that is fact is deeply unclear in the nature of the text. Players believed it to be 100% fact. There was a literal garden, there was a literal gardener, there was a literal winnower. And now it's starting to become clear that those may not actually be just concrete ideas, but metaphors or things that are far less concrete and clear. And as we get closer into the final shape, more answers on that will start coming up. And the final shape, of course, will have a lot of answers about the nature of those conflicts. That's it. There you go. You would be led to believe that there is no Winnower, there never was, and anyone who says otherwise is a fool attached to their fanfictions. And I disagree. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to take these arguments and I'm going to dismantle them. You see how much is left in this video? Pure dismantling. It's gonna be good. Okay, let's start with the Witness. Does it say anywhere in-game that the Witness wrote Unveiling? No. As a matter of fact, Eris wrote Unveiling. And that's because Unveiling came from the artifact we got from the statue in the Moon Pyramid. She has that artifact, and she wrote the last page of the lore book. At the same time, she's also the one who gave us the lore book Singular Exegete, which was information given to her by the pyramids in Arrivals. So this is the truth of this part of the argument. Unveiling is information recorded by Eris from the artifact, which we read in Unveiling. Therefore, the correct way of looking at it is this. You have the source or author who then relayed the information through the relic. And then Eris got that information from the relic and wrote it down into Unveiling. And then we read Unveiling. This is my first question to you. Why would the Witness give us Unveiling? The Witness actually has already communicated to us through the relic. When you commune with it in the pyramid, the Witness gives you that vision, remember? Why would it use the same thing twice? And that's my first point. Second point, Unveiling allegedly reveals everything about the origins of the universe, but most importantly, it reveals everything about the Darkness's goals and motivations. Now, the Witness never gave this information to anyone else. Rolk had to guess at the Witness's true goals, and even the Final Shape Collector's Edition says that the disciples all had different guesses of what the final shape even was. The Witness never gave too much away. So why would it do that for us? And at the same time, and I'm skipping ahead here now, but if the Witness is what Orc spoke to, why would it do that for him? So why would it do that to us? Going back to that. Well, because it wants us to join it? Well, this is not true, as the Witness after Beyond Light has completely ignored us. It wanted the Traveler and the Veil. It went and it got both, and then it swatted us away like flies the whole time. So why dump a whole backstory onto us if it doesn't care what we do and it's going to ignore us anyway? Oh, but it wanted us to have stasis in Beyond Light, right? Yeah. And what happened after that? Nothing. We got stranded by ourselves. If anything, the pyramids tried to stop us getting it. And again, there's been no proper communication between us and the witness ever since. I'm going to be blunt and call it what it is. The whole pyramids trying to make us go to the dark side, it's a dead storyline. And for the record, when the pyramids were trying to make Guardians go bad, stasis and other powers, it would have been enough. A book wouldn't make that much of a difference, and by the way, we don't even know how accessible that book was to random Guardians. Lisbon's fire team, the Kentarch 3, and the Black Garden went bad. How did that happen? They were given darkness powers. Sola, Season of the Worthy, she went bad. She had to get put down. Why? She got darkness powers. So my summary of that point is that, first of all, the witness has no reason to dump that info on us. It has turned Guardians to the darkness in a way that doesn't involve it breaking character, and besides, that whole storyline of Dark Guardians seems to be dead in the water and abandoned anyways. So it doesn't make sense why the witness would talk to us through our ghost, give us a vision through a relic, and then use that same relic to give us information it never gave anyone else, for a reason that fell flat in the end anyway, and the whole time it's just pretending to be somebody else. Speaking of pretending to be someone else, is the witness talking to us in Unveiling? No. The character who is speaking to us not only speaks using singular pronouns, I, me, you get it, and with a personality that doesn't match the witness, but at the same time has knowledge and claims that I would be shocked for the witness to have. This character knows that there are 3 billion base pairs of our root species genome, and that there is a single code for a protein called P53. No, the witness didn't read our minds and use this information against us. I had no idea of this information, and I'd bet a lot of money, which isn't a lot, that most Guardians don't either. This character also claims to be responsible for the Cambrian explosion, the creation of the first predator on Earth, which caused a rapid series of evolutions until finally humans were made. And what do they say? This was the Cambrian explosion, the great birth of complex life on your world. I caused it. I, the defector, the destroyer, the one who takes. First of all, does that sound like the witness to you? Second, would the witness even bother doing that? Remember, thanks to the cutscene from Asa and the events of Lightfall, we know what the witness has done since its creation. It's chased the Traveler and made Rourke its disciple, who then went and did a lot of the other stuff for the witness. The creation of the Hive? An immediate transformation that immediately hurt the Traveler. The Cambrian explosion? A transformation that took billions of years for a people that the witness destroyed in the collapse anyways, and then ignored later on still. There is no coherent logic here. I am sorry, but I feel like there are way too many hoops to jump through to believe that the witness is behind all of those events. So let's summarize. It's weird that the witness would communicate to us through our ghost and give us a vision with this relic, but then proceed to dump a fake backstory on us, along with its motivations and what it wants from us in the end, both of which goes against its character, and it does this by pretending to be a, God character, co-creator of the universe by the way, while making claims and boasting knowledge that doesn't make sense for it to have. It doesn't make sense. Quick tangent. Guess what? Did you know that the pyramids were in our system before the collapse? That's right, they were. The Enclave on Mars is suspicious as to when that was made. There were ancient pyramid artifacts buried on the moon, found during the Golden Age. There's the Veiled Woman statue on Europa, along with pyramid relics that were found during the Golden Age too. All of this proves that the fleet was here before the collapse. You might think, oh, that means the witness made us. Again, go back to the character and what they want. Why would the witness do this And in the end, even if Bungie originally wrote it so that the witness made humanity, that's clearly been retconned now. But do you know what is suspicious? That a people with pyramid ships, who have statues of people, horses, lions, relics with human languages on it, display cases with full-on pyramids in a desert, and more. And these people were in our system long before the collapse. I'm sorry, but that's just really interesting, I have to say. I'm being facetious. If you know me, you know. So I believe that through logic and unbiased common sense, it is safe to say that the witness did not give us Unveiling, as it goes against its character, and with everything we know right now, it would be very goofy for the entire thing to have been from this character. I'm not done yet. Let's take a look at that quote from the narrative guy. I'll read it out again. Welcome to the problem that all Bible scholars have been trying to figure out. What may or may not have happened, and aligning that up to actual historical events, says senior narrative designer Robert Brooks. Unveiling is a parable. It is effectively a religious text, and how much of that is propaganda, how much of that is myth, how much of that is fact, is deeply unclear in the nature of the text. Players believed it to be 100% fact. There was a literal garden, there was a literal gardener, there was a literal winnower, and now it's starting to become clear that those may not actually be just concrete ideas, but metaphors or things that are far less concrete and clear. And as we get closer into the final shape, more answers on that will start coming up. And the final shape, of course, will have a lot of answers about the nature of those conflicts. You might think that this solves it. It doesn't. All this does is say that the contents of Unveiling shouldn't be trusted at absolute face value. What's more is that it compares Unveiling to the Bible, whose books and parables have been the focus of many debates concerning their correct interpretations. This would also put Unveiling in the same category as Truth to Power, a lore book infamously filled with lies. Okay, this is where it gets fun. It's always fun digging into things. Are you having fun? I'm having fun. So he used the Bible as a comparison. Okay, let's look at the Bible. Take all the books in the Bible. We accurately know who wrote most, if not all of them. The true meaning behind a lot of the books is up in the air, sure, but it's not really in question who wrote them. Now let's look at parables. Jesus is infamous for saying lots of parables. Again, due to the fact that they are parables, the true meaning is interpreted by some people differently than others. But nobody can disagree and say that Jesus didn't say the parables. And even if he didn't, we can then guess that it was the guy who wrote that part of the book. So let's go back to Destiny. Truth to Power, full of lies and parables. Well, we know where the information came from, which is why the lies make sense. With this in mind, you can take the narrative team's quote at face value, and you can take the entirety of Unveiling's contents, and you can throw them out the window. But the one speaking to us, that remains. And so, this is what it comes down to. Is the witness speaking to us in Unveiling and going completely against its character, as I have just pointed out, or is it actually a character who presents themselves as the winnower in the stories? For the record, there's never been a point in time where the gardener has gone, "I'm the gardener," and the winnower has gone, "I'm the winnower." These are just placeholder names, basically job titles. In Unveiling, the narrator isn't saying, "I'm the winnower," but when they speak of the character that is referred to as the winnower, it's clear that this character's perspective is their perspective, and that this character's goals are their goals, and that this character's relationship with the gardener character is the same as their relationship with the gardener character. Let's look at the second part of that quote. And the final shape, of course, will have a lot of answers about the nature of those conflicts. If I am completely wrong here, then what answers are left to be revealed in the final shape about Unveiling? That the witness is behind Unveiling? That the witness made humanity? That the gardener and winnower don't exist? The first two I've already answered, but long story short, if I am wrong, then any quote-unquote answers we get in the final shape will be things that we theoretically already know. So either the narrative team, they're hyping up some pretty lame reveals, or there is more going on here than what people take for granted. Okay, let's take a step back. Bro, my wisdom teeth or something, they have been annoying me for so long and my jaw gets so stiff. Do you know how many times I've had to stop and restart a section because my jaw won't open fully and I go, yeah, bro, this is a pain, man, it's a pain. Okay, this is a break for me too. But by the way, if you're still watching this, you're doing really well. Thank you so much for your attention. I'm grateful to have someone like you watching my videos, whether you agree with me or not. The next thing to tackle will be the validity of the Winnower ever existing. Is this dude, this absolute bingus, who we call the Winnower, solely found in Unveiling? No. Let me read some lore for you. Oryx, my king, my friend. Kick back, relax, shrug off that armor, set down that blade. Roll your burdened shoulders and let down your guard. This is a place of life, a place of peace. Out in the world, we ask a simple, true question. A question like, can I kill you? Can I rip your world apart? Tell me the truth, for if I don't ask, someone will ask it of me. And they call us evil. Evil. Evil means socially maladaptive. We are adaptiveness itself. Oryx, how do we explain it to them? The world is not built on the laws they love, not on friendship, but on mutual interest. Not on peace, but on victory by any means. The universe is run by extinction, by extermination, by gamma ray bursts burning up 1,000 garden worlds, by howling singularities eating up infant suns. And if life is to live, if anything is to survive through the end of all things, it will live not by the smile, but by the sword. Not in a soft place, but in a hard hell. Not in the rotting bog of artificial paradise, but in the cold, hard, self-verifying truth of that one ultimate arbiter, the only judge, the power that is its own metric and its own source, existence at any cost. Strip away the lies and truces, delaying tactics they call civilization, and this is what remains, this beautiful shape. The fate of everything is made like this, in the collision, the test of one praxis against another. This is how the world changes. One way meets a second way, and they discharge their weapons, they exchange their words and markets, they contest, and in doing so they petition each other for the right to go on being something instead of nothing. This is the universe figuring out what it should be in the end. And it is majestic. Majestic. It is the only thing that can be true in and of itself. And it is what I am. That is from the Books of Sorrow. They are not all mine, not in the way that admirers, such as my man Oryx, are mine, utterly devoted to the practice of my principle, but some of them have, nonetheless, found their way home. And of course, I truly value you. To the gardener, you are a means to an end. To me, you are majestic, majestic. You are full of the only thing worth anything at all. Those two were from Unveiling. And then there's this is from the Shadowkeep Collector's Edition. Transcendence lies not in the denial of attachments and limitations, but in the complete understanding of our confinement and tautological tyranny of existence. The final stage of Buddhism cannot be obtained. There is no escape from samsara, which is the never-ending cycle of death and rebirth, by the way, for it is as closed as a lock. This is the inevitable and perfect shape of the truth. It is magnificent. Majestic, majestic. That phrase again, majestic, majestic. It's almost like a call sign. And finally, we have this here. She will bow to me. We'll get to that eventually, but think about who she could be while I continue. And if you're wondering why I read all that lore, this is why. Unveiling, that chapter from the Books of Sorrow and Shadowkeep, not only are they linked and connected through the language used, and even there's direct references to relationships with other characters like, say, the Gardener or Oryx, but the logic and ideology of what's being said, it goes against the witnesses. Let me put this very simply for you. The Winnower, or the Deep, is the root source of the sword logic, which states that all life is in competition for survival, where the strong life must destroy the weak, and that if you die, it's because you were weak and deserve to die. The end state of this is that everything will die, including the universe. Stars will die, galaxies will go out, you name it. If you watch my Winnower video, I go into great detail as to how the character ended up being put into the game that is the Destiny universe. Therefore, in the end, without the Gardener's interference, all life will die except for the Winnower, which is exactly what it wants. At the same time, the Winnower wants this because it sees the desired end as the natural conclusion of how everything will turn out. This matches Unveiling, as the Gardener wanted to change the flower game because she found the repetitive ending boring, whereas the Winnower was fine with it, as it was the natural order of things. The Winnower desires order, structure, and cold logic. In the Destiny universe, this ideology takes the form of the sword logic. It's not that the Winnower is evil and hates everyone, wanting all life to die. If anything, it sees the sword logic as good and merciful. If all weak life is killed, then its suffering is cut short, and at the same time, it will no longer bring down stronger life. If that means eventually everyone will die, then so be it. It's not the Winnower's fault they aren't good enough. That sounds like a skill issue to me. It's not that the Winnower is going out of its way to change the universe, it's actually the opposite. The Winnower sees the end brought about by the sword logic as the natural way of the universe, and sees the Gardener as the one trying to change things. Both the Gardener and the Winnower believe that what they want is the natural way of the universe, and they see the opposite's final shape as them going against the grain. With this in mind, it's clear to see that the Witness is vastly different to the Winnower. It is the definition of going against the grain, wanting effectively to end the universe's version of the flower game by freezing the universe in a permanent, never-changing state, where everything and everyone is just the way it wants them to be. Transcendence lies not in the denial of attachments and limitations, but in the complete understanding of our confinement and tautological tyranny of existence. The final stage of Buddhism cannot be attained. There is no escape from samsara, for it is as closed as a lock. This is the inevitable and perfect shape of the truth. It is magnificent, majestic. Again, this connects back to what I said about the Winnower not wanting to change the natural order of things. And again, it goes against the Witness's ideology of quote-unquote liberating the universe of life and death. Enough death, enough life. Not only is this connected to the Winnower through its ideology, but you even have the calling card of majestic. It all comes together. Destiny 1 Books of Sorrow. This is the universe trying to figure out what it is meant to be, aka the universe progressing naturally and without interference. The end state of this progression is the Deep's final shape, and it calls it majestic, and it is what I am. Destiny 2 Shadowkeep's Collector's Edition. There is no escape from the cycle of life and death that is the natural state of the universe, and then that same character says it is majestic. Destiny 2 Unveiling, the character who we refer to as the Winnower says, here are my origins and my complete backstory. I am the one who caused the creation of the universe. I am the one who made the first predator on your world, effectively making me the cause of humanity's evolution. I am the enemy of the Gardener. I value you. Please join me, because you are majestic. In the Books of Sorrow, you have the Darkness, which is the Deep character who sees themselves as majestic in D1, and now in D2, we have this strange umbral center that can't be explained. Well, this character in Unveiling says that they are the enemy of the light, and that they were responsible for our creation, and that we too are majestic, full of the only thing that matters at all. When they said that they were majestic because they were full of the only thing that mattered at all. It's like they have, you see where I'm going with this. The Darkness, which is the Deep in the Books of Sorrow, the character speaking through the Shadowkeep Collector's Edition, and the character speaking through Unveiling, they are one and the same. One ideology, one personality, all linked and connected. a coherent vision, and a coherent character. I've explained why the witness can't be the character speaking to us in Unveiling. I've taken the character known as the darkness which is the deep from the Books of Sorrow, and through their ideology and personality, connected them to the character speaking in Unveiling, which is also the same character in the Shadowkeep Collector's Edition. In the end, you have only two options. Either the witness is behind Unveiling, or the character who we call the Winnower is. Not only have I effectively eliminated the first option, but I've also provided the foundation for this other character, proving that this is actually a well-established character who has existed since Destiny 1. Now, I believe that I've already proven my point, and maybe some of you are sitting there going, yeah dude, I'm actually on board now, I see where you're going with this, fair play. I think that I've done a decent job of things so far. For all intents and purposes, yeah, I could end this video right now. But I won't, and it's for one simple reason. From now on, when I make a video and I am told that Unveiling is all fake, that the Winnower is the witness, and that I have absolutely no idea what I'm talking about, and that I'm just some sad fanboy, I will point to this one video, and it will be enough. And so I will take us to our next topic, which is the relationship between the Gardener and the Winnower, and how these two have existed since Destiny 1. Now I want you to stick with me on this, because this is a slow burn, but it is brutal at the end and it's well worth the wait, trust me bro. Even if all of the contents of Unveiling are false and misleading, I think that there is one fact that can be taken as that, a fact. There is the light and there is the darkness, and behind these two are characters/entities whose ideologies are fundamentally opposed to each other. They are not good or evil, they are beings with one purpose, and the nature of that purpose has made them each other's nemesis. I say this all the time and I'll say it again, you cannot have one without the other. If the Gardener exists, then the Winnower must as well. If the Winnower exists, then the Gardener must as well. And bro, I didn't even think about this, but isn't that dude, that absolute broski Ulantan or whatever his name is, with the symmetry, the yin yang and the... Yeah, I mean even that kind of goes into what I'm saying, but anyway, I'll continue anyway. Let's go all the way back to the beginning. She has been nameless since our birth, a constant adversary, caring for nothing but my ruin, a sword drenched in my blood, forever my greatest and only love. She is the Dark One, the enemy and lover without whom my very existence would be pathetic and vulgar. Her eyes steam and boil in the night. She is fantastically beautiful, yet I cannot stand the sight of her. Our relationship is complex, and perhaps eternal. We met once in the garden, at the beginning of the world, and unaware of our twin destinies. Not the Garden of Genesis, but another, forgotten, untended, and now choked with weeds, unvisited except for ourselves. We matched stares across a dry fountain, and I recall her smiling at me before she devoured the lawn and trees with a translucent blue flame, and tore flagstones from the path, and hurled them into the sky, screaming my sins. That is from Marathon 2. Perhaps I'll make a different video someday about how the concept of two godlike characters at war with each other has existed in Bungie's older games, thanks to Jason Jones. But for now, I'll just leave you with this last example. This is the combination of lore from Marathon Infinity, Unveiling, and the Dreams of Alpha Lupi. It isn't meant to be a one-to-one perfect combination of lore, but it does show just how similar these concepts are. I looked at the Gardener, I looked at my hands, and I discovered the first knife. There was nothing to be gained from hesitation now, yet in her possession it would become something of consequence, though it was nothing more than a simple thorn from a particular flower, or more precisely, a rose. When she had it just so, the room flickered and tore, bending into somewhere else which she caused to be consumed by an ashless fire. Silently, doors opened before her without cause, their locks rusted and shattered. Her slender hands began to dance in front of her horrified face, the rose turning into a fine powder which settled in a pile on the floor where she had been standing. We wrestled in the garden. and in the loam of possibility where nothing existed and everything might. A shadowed agony among the flowers. We trampled the petals beneath our feet. We stomped the fruit to pulp and ground the seeds into the dust, each flower's closing the detonations that made the universes. And I recall her smiling at me before she devoured the lawn and trees with a translucent blue flame. Flames. I see flames everywhere. That huge, blue, grinning thing torched everything and tore flagstones from the path and hurled them into the sky, screaming my sins. I powder a granite monument into a soundless flash, showering the grass with molten drops of its gold inlay, sending smoking chips of stone skipping into the fog. We left prints of our splayed feet and our straining backs in the clay. Our trampling feet made waves in the garden, which were the fluctuations around which the infant universes coalesced their first structures. The dilation field yawned beneath existence. Symmetries snapped like glass. Like creases, flaws in space-time collected filaments of dark matter that inhaled and kindled the first galaxies of suns. And still we grappled. Our rolling bodies pushed things out of the garden. They came out into the madness of primordial space. They thrashed and became large. Our reunions there, our epic battles fought without quarter, often in the dark, as the moon is seldom visible and the sun never. She splinters an ancient oak with a force that takes my breath and hurls me to the ground. We brought down the tree of silver wings and left the stump to smoke amid the meadows. The air around it is oppressive and inspires violence in those who even breathe a little in. Shards of the disastrous bark peel from it and litter the ground, and nothing grows in its shadow. It scintillates faintly at dusk. It has achieved its entelechy with every body falling, every civilization laid to waste, every leaf forged into instruments of ruin. The garden is empty now, except for a smoldering stump in the center, illuminating every edge, a distant candle throwing the light of nature. Around the edges of the flame is the face of a woman who is talking to me about subjects that I should know all about. For just a moment, I think that the flame is a living metaphor for her soul. I'm getting sick of coming back here, but there is no avoiding it. This is what my existence needs. My existence is the demise of many others. The world is not a good place, nor is there innocence for me to hide in. The gardener, however, is hard to bother. She is constantly amidst her weeds, kneeling in the tangent dust, gloves covered in a mix of distant soils and metallic saps. She is listening to the music of the insects amidst the flowers, the unguent as it begins to drip from the ferns, and not to you, and certainly not to your cries for help. She leaves, and I lie in the slow rain of burning slivers of wood, staring at the low, dark clouds, craving our next meeting. Let's start with Destiny 1. First of all, we have this art of this character. She is associated with the Traveler, and was cut from the first cinematic of the game. We also have art of this character, although nothing has ever been said about him. Interesting sword though, I wonder if we'll ever see it come up again. We have the lore of Mark 44 Standasides, which says, "The tree in the garden with silver wings. The air around it is oppressive and inspires violence in those who even breathe a little in. Shards of the disastrous bark peel from it and litter the ground, and nothing grows in its shadow. It scintillates faintly at dusk. It has achieved its entelechy with every body falling, every civilization laid to waste, every leaf forged into instruments of ruin. The gardener is hard to bother. She is constantly amidst her weeds, kneeling in the tangent dust, gloves covered in a mist of distant soils and metallic saps. She is listening to the music of the insects amidst the flowers, the unguent as it begins to drip from the ferns, the slight scratch of the worm beneath, and not to you, and certainly not to your cries for help. So we have a garden, and in that garden there is a tree with silver wings. And in the garden there is a gardener with a capital G and female pronouns. And there's even a reference to what might be the worm god species. Interesting, okay. The next lore of importance is of the collapse, and it is from Rasputin's perspective. This is Grimoire card Ghost Fragment Mysteries. I bear an old name. It cannot be killed. They were my brothers and sisters, and their names were immortal too. But Titanomachy came, and now those names live in me alone, I think, and think is what I do. I am alone. At the end of things, when the world goes dim and cold or hot and close, or it all tears apart from the atom up, I will shout those names defiant, and past the end I will endure, I alone. They made me to be stronger than them, to beat the unvanquished, and survive the unthinkable, and look, lo behold, I am here alone, survivor. They made me to learn. Everything died, but I survived, and I learned from it. Consider it the power Titanomach world ender, and consider what it means. I met it at the gate of the garden, and I recall it smiled at me before it devoured the blossoms with black flame and pinned their names across the sky. It was stronger than everything. I fought it with aurora knives, and with stolen on fire of singularities made sharp, and my sweat was earthquake and my breath was static, but it was stronger, so how did I survive? I am alone. I survived alone. I cast off the shield, and I shrugged my shoulders so that the billions fell off me down into the ash. They made me to be stronger than them and to learn, and I learned well. It is alone, and it is strong, and it won, even over the gardener, and she held power beyond me, but the gardener did not shrug and make herself alone. It always wins. And I won. I won because the gardener always stops to offer peace, and when she does, I always strike. But by then it didn't matter, the game was over. Whoops, okay, that last part was from Unveiling. I got ahead of myself. It is, but it is. So now we know that the gardener is associated with the traveler, and that she lost against a character referred to as It, who seemingly took part in the collapse and beat her. Who was It? Well, let's break it down. Rasputin refers to the collapse as Titanomachy, which in ancient Greek mythology was the war between the gods and the Titans. So let's just call the collapse a war of the gods. It makes sense, light versus darkness. And who is It? It is the Titanomach world ender. I'm going to then say that the character is a world-ending god. So in the collapse, the gardener, who is associated with a garden that has a tree of silver wings, and the traveler, fought against a world-ending god and lost, partially because she refused to abandon humanity. However, it is alone, it is strong, and it won. It always wins. So now we have confirmation that the gardener is a female-presenting character. I say that because she isn't human, who is associated with the garden I mentioned, and the traveler, and then by extension, the light. And we have an opposing force that was at the collapse, who is strong enough to beat the gardener, and who could be described as a world-ending god. From the description of the black flames and the blossoms, it seems like this is a paracausal force too, and if you wanted to push it, you could say that it has a connection to the garden as well, since Rasputin fought them at the gate to the garden, a gate we believe to have been at the cradle on Mars. Also, note the similarity to the marathon lore I mentioned, the entity smiling at the narrator before devouring blossoms in flame. Blue flame and black flame. Really cool. Let's fast forward a bit. In the Grimoire card, The Queen, and in Ghost Fragment Fallen 4, Marasov says, "Starlight was my mother and my father was the dark." Considering the gardener is associated with the light and is a she, Mara has that part right. I wonder if that means the Winnower presents as a male. We'll have to keep going. Next up we have the Taken King, which obviously has the Books of Sorrow. This book introduces the concept of the deep and the sky, and most importantly establishes two things. That the deep is a place that orcs traveled down into, and that it's a character who orcs spoke with. Books of Sorrow gave us this character's personality and their view of the universe, specifically what they believe the true final shape to be. We also learn that due to the whole unborn ogre situation, it most likely doesn't have a body, at least one that it can take outside of the deep. Beyond that, the Taken King has item descriptions that make reference to a character known as the Formless One. I think this Formless One character connects to the deep character pretty smoothly if you ask me. The exotic Titan arms, ruin wings, were introduced in The Taken King, and the description says, "In the garden grows a tree of silver wings. The leaves are ruin, the bark disaster, of the seeds we do not speak." Once more, lore about a garden in which a tree of silver wings grew. Okay. Final point for The Taken King is that the deep character is said to be the deep. So when Oryx is talking to the deep, keep in mind that the deep is also a term used for the darkness. But the traveler is never said to be the sky, but instead the sky's bait star. So then that makes me wonder if there is a character who they would call the sky then. I'm actually going to fast forward to Curse of Osiris from here. In that expansion, Osiris made the prophecies that were connected to the guns that you could craft in that time. The first prophecy is attached to the weapon Garden Progeny, and it states, "Two siblings cleaved by time and space, reflections never found alone. The ending of the eldritch race, a path long seen but never known." I'm going to leave this here and then come back to it in a bit. Let's fast forward again to Forsaken, and we get the Maracena lore book, which explains how the Awoken were made. The key part of this lore is when the soon-to-be Awoken encountered the darkness and witnessed the raw primal clash of light and darkness. At this point, the collapse had already begun. The Traveler is on Earth, having left Io, and it and humanity on Earth are desperately trying to fight the Pyramids and the Hive and whoever else is there. Meanwhile, the Exodus Green experiences this. The stars have gone out, the universe blackened. A shroud of nothingness drawn over Yanglue, its 40,000 sleeping passengers, its 900 crew, and maybe even the whole solar system. There is no way to know, because there is no way to see anything beyond the hull. The vacuum itself has become hostile to the propagation of light. Darkness surrounds them. The ship bucks on a storm sea as space-time ripples with gravity tides. An incredible sensation washes over Captain Lee. A rumble and a thrum down in her gut, in her marrow, in the lowest, basest elements of her body. It is the vibration, the sound of the very fabric of her being, scrunching up and stretching out. The distance between the atoms of her body collapses and then expands. The cycle repeats again and again. For a moment, she feels her fingertips and toes pulled away from her core, yanked by tidal forces. It feels like the lowest rumble of the biggest subwoofer ever built. It sounds like the deep voice of God whispering ASMR directly into her ear. It tingles, it thrills, and it leaves in its wake a subsonic tint of dread and anticipation. Alice Lee has the distinct sense that something ancient and malevolent is operating upon them. A trillion-fingered hand reaching in to caress the very atoms of their being, setting protons a-spin, strumming nerves like guitar strings, a tongue with 10 billion slithering forks tasting the surface of their brains. The sense of imminent doom crescendos. She knows absolutely and utterly that what is about to happen to her and to her crew is far worse than death. The darkness knows them now. The thing that has come to kill humanity has their taste. Suddenly, as if the void around her has just spontaneously big banged, she sees light. A point of pure white shines in the cosmic distance, not just visible luminance. Her suit decomposes the spectrum, but light in the radio bands, in microwave, keening ultraviolet, a spike of gamma, a total and all-embracing radiation. It sings, it shatters, it speaks in a voice older than suns. She feels that she could Fourier the voice for an eternity, and never decompose it into its parts. It is awesome and appalling and piercingly true. Mara understands how those who die in radiation accidents must feel. A single flash of invisible power sears away all possible futures, except one. She feels her soul itself has been ionized, blasted into a higher energy state. The light pierces the darkness. It illuminates Mara, Oldwin, and Yanglue. It is not quite enough. It cannot vanquish the shadow. So while the pyramids are fighting the traveler on Earth, the Exodus Green encounters the darkness and experiences insane gravity waves. Then, the light shoots across the system and clashes with the darkness, but it is not strong enough. From this, we know that this darkness was not the pyramids, as they were at Earth. And what's more is that in the future, we never get any references to the pyramids wrecking gravity in this way. What's more is that we get confirmation that the Awoken were created due to a clash of light and darkness, and then this ties in with what the Queen said earlier about Starlight being her mother and her father being the darkness. It also ties in with the D1 lore that says that in the God War of the Collapse, the Gardener was unable to defeat the world-ending entity known as it. Another bit of interesting lore we got in Forsaken was the Forsaken Prince lore book, in which Aldrin and Julian, who cares whatever his name is, they go into the Black Garden. There is one line that is relevant. This is a place where abstract patterns war for survival, fighting to propagate themselves by preying on each other. Again, I'll just leave this here, but I think you know where I'm going with this. Next we have Shadowkeep, and oh, would you look at that! There's a lore book called Unveiling. I didn't know that existed, guys. Wow, okay. It talks about two characters called the Gardener and the Winnower. Well, wait a minute. I've heard of the Gardener. She was mentioned in Destiny 1 lore. She's that character associated with the Light and the Traveler, and she was said to be in a garden as well. And in Unveiling, it says that the garden had a tree of silver wings? Well, the garden in D1 had a tree of silver wings too. So that means the garden in Destiny 1 and the garden in Unveiling, they must be one and the same. And the Gardener in Destiny 1 and the Gardener in Unveiling are one and the same. These characters called the Gardener and the Winnower played a flower game where patterns essentially fought for survival. Well, in the Forsaken lore where Aldrin is in the Black Garden, it says that there are patterns fighting for survival. Isn't that interesting? And these two characters, the Gardener and the Winnower, were both created in this garden, and they are the opposite of each other, but they are a pair. You cannot have one without the other. This ties in with Osiris's prophecy. I wouldn't be surprised if these are the two siblings that are connected to the garden progeny. What's more is that the character who identifies with the Winnower character claims to be responsible for humanity's evolution, and at the same time claims that it wants us to join it. So all this time, the light had the Gardener, and the darkness had the Winnower, and they both had two completely different outlooks on how life should exist, and this made them turn on each other. Interesting. So the Gardener must be the entity behind the Traveler and the Light, and the Winnower must be the character behind the darkness and the sword logic, maybe even the veil. Interesting. Oh, and before I forget, in the chapter of Unveiling where the Gardener and Winnower fight, it says this: "And still we fought. We brought down the tree of silver wings and left the stump to smoke amid the meadows." So the tree of silver wings, the one mentioned to have been in a garden in D1 and Unveiling, was destroyed, leaving a stump behind. You know, a lot of people say that this garden from Unveiling, it never existed. It's a purely metaphorical garden. So I wonder if this tree ever did exist, and if it did, then what garden was it in? I'll follow up on that, don't you worry. And then we have the Shadowkeep Collector's Edition quotes, where a character talks about their motivations and uses the term majestic. Well, not only does this connect with the character speaking in Unveiling as they use the majestic phrase, but it also ties in with the deep character from the Books of Sorrow, who not only uses the majestic phrase, but their ideology matches up with the Samsara quote pretty well. So it is safe then to assume that the character known as the Deep, the Formless One, It, and the Winnower are all the same character. Furthermore, the other quote says, "She will bow to me." Given everything I've just been through, who dost thou thinketh that this she might be? and it cannot be the Queen because this was written before the collapse. It's the gardener. And since this character says me, it must be the Winnower. And if you say that it's the witness, you are wrong, not just because of the pronouns, but because of my trump card that I will be pulling at the end of the video. And I've been writing this script and giggling in my seat because I can't wait to use it. But yeah, this character from the collector's edition must be the Winnower, and the she, being the gardener, makes sense. The pyramids get introduced in Shadowkeep, and inside we see the statue of the Veiled Woman. Again, I'm just going to leave that here. Some people think that this is of the Winnower, others would later think that this was the witness, but again, I'm just going to leave it here. But isn't it interesting that the statue looks nearly identical to this picture of the gardener? And in Garden of Salvation, we get another statue with vegetation from the garden attempting to form a sphere around her. And Season of Arrivals, my beloved, has a new tree of silver wings. And what does Eris say? There is a second tree, obviously. It has grown, and from it, the Guardian has taken a seed that we intend to use for study. With the tree's parent felled in the Black Garden, this may be a rarely given opportunity. Oh. The tree of silver wings, the one that was in the garden with the gardener and the Winnower, the one that was felled, this was in the Black Garden. So not only in this video have I shown why the gardener and Winnower are real, but I've even proven that since Destiny 1, there has been an OG garden, and this tree is proof that the Black Garden and the one in Unveiling were one and the same. Furthermore, let's look at art of the Black Garden. You see this thing in the background? I always thought that this was a mountain, until I realized that in Garden of Salvation you actually go there, and it is all made of wood. And in the original concept art of the Black Garden, you can clearly see that this is a stump. Guys, Destiny did the Erd tree before it was cool. And yeah, there's the picture of this massive stump as well, in case you're interested. Oh, and where was the Black Garden originally? It was inside the Traveler. Here is this picture proving it. Season of Arrival's lore also links the Tree of Silver Wings to the power of the Traveler and therefore the light. This massive stump is all that's left of the original Tree of Silver Wings. And why did it fall? Unveiling tells us exactly why. I know I went over the garden earlier, but this is to really smash that nail in the coffin. So yes, by all means, you can take this book with a grain of salt, but even if you do, you need to accept that more likely than not it is from the Winnower. And why not believe the historical account of the book? I understand, take it with a grain of salt, but why not believe the historical account of the book when it can literally be separately verified? And that is what I did. Unveiling talks about the conflict in the garden and lists the Tree of Silver Wings as a casualty. I just did that. I just went and confirmed that did happen. Bro, I know there's some dude watching this and squealing in his chair. Oh my goodness, I had no idea. But yeah, we continue. And just before we keep going, I can tell that I'm losing my voice from talking so much. If I sound absolutely awful at the end of this, I apologize, but it's worth it, 100%. Season of the Worthy, and later Beyond Light, confirms that not only can humanity, all three races by the way, use the darkness, but that it has been inside of us the whole time. We have this umbral center and can use the darkness even without our ghosts, meaning any normal human can use stasis or strand. Just look at Osiris. I wonder why that is. Well, actually, I don't, since Unveiling says that our evolution was interfered with by the entity behind the darkness. Beyond Light and future seasons also cleared up Bungie's deception surrounding the pyramids. They were not the darkness, but instead the Black Fleet, further distancing them from the Unveiling lore, Books of Sorrow, and Marasena. But there is more! Shadowkeep and Beyond Light's pyramid architecture has swords engraved in the walls. And what do these swords remind me of? The one in this picture. And given everything we know now of the Witness and the pyramids, Isn't it odd that they have swords in their architecture? I'll explain it later, don't worry. But yeah, in my opinion, this leads credence to this picture being used by Bungie so many years later down the road. Finally, in the Deepstone Crypt raid lore, Legacy's Oath mark specifically, Saint is having one of his exo dreams, you know the ones that I'm on about, and he's attempting and failing to beat a ton of Vex. Out of nowhere, a woman enters his dream, her clothes black, her hair prematurely grey. She disapproves of his violence, and when he's finally beaten, the Vex all disappear, and she approaches and lays a hand on his helm, as if feeling for a fever. She says that his violent nature makes him and quote-unquote all of you just like his father. She says that in his next life, he should take after her, before allowing him to wake up. Now, I've covered this in my Winnower video, and I read the whole lore and everything, but first of all, the woman wearing dark clothes and her hair being prematurely grey presents the implication that she has been through a lot of stress, that she looks too young to have grey hair. And if you pushed it, you could say the clothes being black indicated mourning. She also treats Saint and speaks to him in the exact way a mother would, tutting at him, the whole feeling for a fever line, and saying that he is more like his father instead of being like her. With all of this being said, who else can this be than the gardener? This isn't Clovis's wife, and there is no inherent behavioral link between all exos and Clovis. However, this would make sense if it was the gardener. You see, the gardener has been through the collapse, and the traveler was nearly destroyed in that ordeal. Her hair being prematurely grey then makes sense. She is the creator of all guardians, and is effectively the mother of the universe, and so her treating Saint as a mother would make sense. The Winnower is the other creator of the universe, and if we're going with him presenting as a male, then him being the guardian's father makes sense too. And you can tie this in with Unveiling, where the Winnower claims to be responsible for humanity's creation, making him not just the father of the universe, but in a way humanity specifically. So what makes Saint and the other guardians like their father? Because they are warriors, and they never stop fighting. Even Ephraty, the pacifist guardian, came back and fought during the Red War. A line from a Darkness Grimoire card, which may actually be the first words from the Winnower in the game, says, "Fight on then, the war is everything." It adds up with the sword logic too, doesn't it? So overall, I think I've presented a very compelling case as to why this Deepstone Crypt lore is actually the only time we've seen the Gardener directly interact with anyone in the game. And finally, in the Deepstone Crypt, we get Clarity Control, another Veiled Woman statue. And Ice is attempting to form a sphere around it. And in Witch Queen, when we go into the European Pyramid and find the Veiled Woman statue there, this picture has the light forming a perfect sphere around her too. Speaking of Witch Queen, we get new pyramid architecture and the reveal of the Witness. I want to point out two things. First point, all of the swords engraved in the architecture are gone in this new art style. However, they are now present in the doors of the pyramids, the main two of note being the entrance to the Vow Pyramid and the entrance to the final room of the Witch Queen Pyramid mission on Europa. Oh, and one very quick point on the side, Bears of Eternity has two swords as well. This one and this one. I wonder what all these swords are supposed to represent. I wonder if there's a character who is associated with a big old sword, but we're not done yet, we'll keep going. And then second point, the Witness is introduced, and it's big and scary and super powerful, the voice in the darkness. But it's also said to be the child of darkness, and that it isn't the actual darkness, but that it wears it as a cloak, giving it a wicked shape. If the Witness is the child of darkness, who is the parent character? We, for example, are referred to as the children of the light. And the Traveler and Gardener, I would say, is our parent figure. Again, look at the lore with Saint. It's all connected. And in Lightfall, we have... Oh, yeah, right, okay. The only thing that I'll mention is that in Root of Nightmares, we get another Veiled Woman statue. This is the 4th expansion in a row where these statues have come up, and no explanation is given. Now let's look at the cutscene in Season of the Deep that explained how the witness was made. Asa, that beautiful beluga, explains that the pyramid race, in fact, was real, and that they were given a golden age by the gardener. I said this years ago. And that Savathun was right. The witness was once mortal, and is not the opposite of the gardener. Asa says that the race wanted a winnower. Now people say that this desire turned into the witness. However, I went back and I watched that cutscene again, and right after Asa says that they wanted a winnower to shape the garden, the veil is brought up. And if you've watched my veil theory videos, mainly part 1, you'll know that I think the winnower and the location known as the Deep is connected to the veil. It's basically the opposite of the traveler having the pale heart. So I do not see the winnower line in the cutscene as a counterpoint to me. If anything, I actually think it's the opposite. Now let's go back to the witness versus the winnower as characters. I've explained the motivations as to why the winnower believes what he believes, going with the grain of the universe, remember? So why did the pyramid race make the witness? Because they were bored and felt like they had no purpose. If anything, that makes their ideology closer to the gardener's, as she wanted to change the flower game because she was bored. Was the winnower bored? No. He loved the way things were because they were logical, and they were the way things were. The witness, by definition, is against the grain. It wants to break and change everything. Does any of what I'm telling you match the ideology presented in the books of Sorrow and Unveiling? The pyramid ships are proven to not be living beings, as they were made during the pyramid race's golden age, and if anything, they were made using tech designed to copy the Traveler, like resonance for example, than anything else. The Veiled Woman's statue comes up again, before the witness is even made, so again, I don't think that this is of the witness. And it is shown being cut up. Now I'm going to ask you this as respectfully as possible. This art of the character we call the Gardener, she is the true source of the Traveler's power. These statues literally use her character's design. And now we know that the ones who made these statues were given a golden age by the Gardener. The statues are in the final shape too, and not only is the final shape the only expansion left where they can be revealed, as the pyramid story will most likely end here, but it's also the only time when the Gardener can be revealed, as we are literally going inside the Traveler. It isn't the witness, so who is it? You know, I would normally say that it isn't the winnower, but at this point, you go for it. Either way, I win, because you cannot have one without the other. So if the statue is of the Gardener, which is what I believe, then the winnower has to exist too. And if the statues are of the big bad, the winnower, then literally the whole video is then proven right, and then at the same time, the Gardener has to exist too. Okay, last 2 points, I promise, and then we take a break. Okay. Just stick with me. In Season of the Witch, Eris hails a character called the Deathless One, the wielder of the Eternal Sword. Bro, she ain't talking about me, that's for sure. We as Guardians die a lot. And also, we are anathema to the sword logic. Dying and coming back to life, it's completely against the darkness's logic. The Witness, even, was born from death, and is fine with the Scorn existing, which again, the Scorn inherently go against the sword logic. And then at the same time, we've never even seen it with a sword. Now maybe in the final shape, it's gonna pull out some katana or something and go, "Wata!" But I mean, yeah, I don't know. I really do not think that this is the Witness. And also, why would Eris hail the Witness? I'm just, yeah. And no, it's definitely not Xivu either, and I don't think we need to really explain that. But you know which character is connected to the sword logic, and who has been associated with a lot of swords? And you know, I've been bringing up these swords that keep coming up, and there's no explanation, and it's kind of oddly similar to the one in this picture. Yeah, I think that this concept art is of the Winnower, and I think that this wielder of the Eternal Sword is the Winnower. And it's not that Eris wants to praise the Winnower, but in being so engulfed in the Hive's ways, at that moment, when she praises the sword logic, because that's what she's doing, she praises the ultimate symbol of the sword logic, and that is the deep. And we've already covered that character, haven't we? Later in that season, Eris says that a voice from the deep whispered to her and encouraged her to seek vengeance within the sword logic. Now, this isn't the Witness. Remember, Season of the Wish has established that the Witness is blind inside the Traveler. It has no idea what we're doing. Also, it's not just a voice from the darkness, but the deep specifically. Now, unless it's some random worm god or some Kelgarath 2.0, who knows, this may be another hint towards there being another character associated with the darkness than the Witness. And this is going off of script, but even recently people are talking about, hey, there's another character who seems to potentially be connected to the Taken. So all I'm saying is that there seems to be more going on in the deep than what meets the eye. Okay, let's take another step back. This whole segment was a little bit harder to follow, I know. We covered a lot of ground. Let's take a few seconds. Why am I over-explaining all of this? Okay? I know that we have our scripts and we talk all professionally and all that, but I recognize I'm going on a waffle, right? I'm spieling. Why am I over-explaining all of this? Because the video is 100% overkill. That's for sure. I recognize that. Well, it's because there are so many people out there in the lore community who, no offense, they act as if they know the lore perfectly, but when you look at the track record, it is clear as day. The Witness is not the Winnower. Unveiling is more likely than not legit, and even if it isn't, it is more likely than not coming from the character we call the Winnower. Now, I have painstakingly gone from Destiny 1 to now, and I've shown evidence for all of it. In my opinion, when you look at all of the lore, you take all the context into consideration, this is the natural conclusion. So why is this a debate to begin with? Why do I need to make a 12,000 word script and an over hour-long video trying to defend these points? Well, for starters, it's not your fault. If you are somebody who's always thought that the Witness is the Winnower, or that the Gardener and Winnower never existed, it's not because you're stupid or that you don't know the lore well enough. It has absolutely nothing to do with a fault from you. Because this wasn't easy to do. This is the hardest script I've ever written, and as of right now, this is like day 4 of just doing the script. It took me honestly, it's probably going to be 2 weeks in total to make this whole video. Ultimately, the main reason why this is an issue to begin with is because the story is a mess. It's an absolute mess, man. Destiny 1 never properly introduced the concept of the Gardener and the Winnower, not in a way that most people, if anybody, could really see. And then when we finally do get lore, solid lore, that names both characters and gives us a solid history, on the side at the same time we get the Witness. And so you, as a player and as a story enjoyer, you are split between two paths. You are left asking yourself, do I hang on to hope that this Winnower character in the lore is real, and that the Witness who I'm looking at in a cutscene is a separate character and story? Or do I believe what Bungie says when they make this character out to be the end-all be-all of the darkness? Even though so many things don't make sense, you just have to shrug your shoulders and say it is what it is. And my video that's gotten over 40,000 views about the narrative of the Light and Darkness saga, do you know how many comments I've gotten where people just are like, it is what it is? It doesn't make sense, but that's Bungie. That is the general, I think, opinion of a lot of people, where either they have their theories and to them it makes sense and they stick with them, but how many others amongst you, even if something doesn't make sense, you just kind of go with it because it is what it is. And then you have people from the narrative team adding fuel to the fire, putting the whole book into question. The average player is going to have no idea, and then even for you, and you are somebody I don't consider average since you're watching a massive lore video, it's freaking hard to separate the truths of the world from the deceptions. Bungie has become notorious for this. First, they said that the pyramids were the darkness. How many of you believed that the pyramid ships were the actual darkness? And then they pulled a gotcha moment and revealed they weren't. No guys, they're actually the Black Fleet, haha, gotcha. And then they made the Witness look like the actual darkness. And then they pulled a gotcha and revealed it was from a mortal race. And so now it's looking like you have this godlike being called the Traveler and the Gardener, and then this being it gave a golden age to that backfired, right? And then now they're trying to make it look like the actual ball, the white sphere, is the Gardener, even though I've covered all the art and the lore that goes against this. And if it does go this way, I can't wait for them to reveal the Gardener character in final shape and chuckle as people are stunned. Wow, I had no idea. I don't know, but is it all a deception? Has Bungie blurred the lines on purpose to artificially make their reveals have more impact? I mean, maybe, but there's also a good chance that they're just straight up retconning things. Look at the Books of Sorrows with the Witness and Rolk now being involved. Look at how they've made Savathûn single-handedly save humanity in the collapse, and if you still don't get that, I'm sorry, I guess I really didn't explain it well in that video. Look at what they did to Nezarec, and potentially what they'll end up doing to the Pyramid race as a whole. And I've talked about this before, but I've mentioned that there are videos that I'm saving and I'm waiting to make after the final shape. And depending on how things play out in this expansion, I'm probably going to make a video similar to this about the pyramid ships and how they were handled in Destiny 2 as a whole from the beginning all the way to the final shape. And I also want to make a video about Nezarec, because if you've watched all of my videos, you can kind of piece together what I'm going to talk about in that video, but I think that how badly the character got shafted probably has gone under the radar, but I'm just kind of throwing that in there. It is what it is, but my point is that as much as Bungie has a track record of hyping things up by misleading people and then pulling a gotcha moment on them, they also have a track record of retconning, so it can go either way. And so now when we have the Gardener and the Winnower, it could go either way. Continuing with retconning, the Winnower and the Witness, they were introduced in the same expansion. And in my opinion, it was for one reason: conflict within the narrative team. Okay, this is a disclaimer. What I'm going to say next is my own opinion. I can't prove this is purely speculation, and it's just me thinking out loud. If anybody at Bungie watches this, please know that I'm not trying to be disrespectful. It's just me thinking out loud. Okay, cool. The concepts of two gods eternally linked and opposed to each other, it may very well predate Destiny as a franchise. This may very well be an OG Bungie concept. If the Gardener and the Winnower were always supposed to be the main story of Destiny, but coming into Shadowkeep of D2, there's still like nothing really happening with them, how likely is a newer writer to take those concepts and use them, respecting their original vision the whole time? Now, I think it is natural for a writer to want to tell their own stories, to write their own characters, to leave their own mark. The worst extreme of this would probably be Rian Johnson with The Last Jedi and J.J. Abrams' trilogy. Like the movie or not, you can't deny that Rian Johnson took the plot points offered up by J.J. and then decided to subvert or retcon them. And ultimately, I think a lot of it came down to pride and him wanting to put his own spin on things and leave his own mark on the franchise. And I'm not saying at all, okay, that the Bungie narrative team is the equivalent of Rian Johnson in The Last Jedi, okay? I do not believe they are that bad at all. But when I see a character like the Witness appear out of nowhere and is now the main antagonist of the Light and Darkness saga, it makes me feel like maybe they retconned the Winnower in order to put their newer, more modern take in its place. Maybe Robert Brooks said that about Unveiling because he and his team have since retconned the original meaning. And again, I'd love nothing more than to see the Gardener in the final shape and the foreshadowing of the Winnower for the future, but the only true foundation we have for these characters is lore. Listen, you've just spent like an hour listening and watching me bring up lore and pictures. That is inferior to gameplay. That will always be inferior to a cutscene. It will always be inferior to dialogue. And just because I've done my job of connecting all the dots together and giving you a timeline and showing you that it checks out, that doesn't mean that they will be for sure revealed. There is a good chance that Unveiling, the Gardener, and the Winnower were real. But now they, and all that lore I've just gone through, that they are all as good as the dead stump in the Black Garden. Which, by the way, it seems like the Pale Heart is the 2.0 version of anyways. This is the simple truth. Either the Gardener, the Winnower, and Unveiling are core parts of Destiny's story, and Bungie haven't forgotten them but are keeping the truth close to their chest as some hope for, or the Gardener, the Winnower, and Unveiling are core parts of the corpse that is Destiny's true 10-year saga, and instead we have this 3 to 4 year saga that awkwardly rests on its bones. It's a square on a circle hole. Either I'm right and the Gardener, the Winnower, and Unveiling are real, or I'm right and Bungie at some point after Shadowkeeper Beyond Light chose to retcon the Gardener, the Winnower, and Unveiling. But to say that there was never a retcon, and to say that this is the way it's always been, is utterly and factually false. Oh yeah, I forgot my trump card. You remember how I went through all those lore books and stories from Destiny 1 to 2? All those things that talk about the light and the darkness, the Gardener and the Winnower, from Mark 44 stand-asides to Unveiling? Yeah, all of, if not most of them, were written by one person, Seth Dickinson. Now this might surprise you, but he's not on the narrative team. He's been consistently contracted to come in and write the lore of Destiny since its early days, and I know for a fact that he wrote stuff as recently as parts of Lightfall's Collector's Edition. He may have even worked on the Final Shape Collector's Edition, I don't know yet. If there is one man with one vision, it's gotta be him. He wrote a ton of the Grimoire, the Books of Sorrow, Maracena, Truth to Power, Unveiling, and more. So when I point out any link between texts, he probably wrote those texts and is aware of those links. And what does Seth Dickinson, the writer of so much Destiny lore, have to say about people who don't believe that the Winnower is real? And yes, this is him speaking. He has since deleted his Reddit account, but he wrote the Trader Baru Cormorant novel, and this other Reddit post says that the user General Batuta is the guy behind that novel. And what about the current story of Destiny as a whole? What are his thoughts on that? Well, on the Something Awful forums, somebody said, I was really looking forward to a payoff on the whole sword logic / bomb logic thing, but they just seem to be on course to rival Game of Thrones for a disappointing and confusing last-minute change of course. And then this is what he had to say. It is, for whatever it's worth, something I think is urgently important to figure out in real life. If we assign value to systems by their ability to succeed in a competitive environment, which we do under capitalism, under evolution, even under the stupid but very real ecosystem of ideas and memes, then what do we do when it turns out that the good thing to do is not the same as the competitively successful thing to do? Do we give up on the good? How do we make a good that can preserve itself in the face of competitive threats, the Ring of Spears, while still remaining good on the inside? Can being good make us more competitively successful? And if so, how? Is something good if it only guarantees good for those within it, inside the Ring of Spears? Or does it also need to generate external good for those who refuse to play by the rules? How do we promote good people to positions of moral authority when people who want authority pretend to be good in order to get power and undercut or outcompete the genuinely good people? How do we save the planet when our system of organizing society assigns the highest competitive value to things that are destroying the planet? How do we create systems that reward cooperation when the payoffs of cooperation make it more and more tempting and profitable to cheat, to free ride, to actively screw over other cooperators? How do we cure cancer when cancer is a failure of cellular morality? What is the difference between a moral and immoral cell? What does the body do to reward the cooperators and punish the competitors? How do we make video games we love and care about and enjoy when the metric for a game's success is how well it sells and how many hours of engagement it generates? What happens when fun and meaning begin to decouple from sales and engagement? It has been disappointing, personally, to see Destiny steer away from these questions. I think they are questions which match the primordial urgency of concepts like light and darkness. I would feel a whole lot more relaxed and relieved if I knew that the guy who wrote so much of Destiny's lore was responsible for creating the story of the game we actually played. It would make me believe that there was one vision being followed through, that lore was being remembered and kept track of, and that continuity was being maintained and respected. One guy at the head with a vision. Sometimes that's what you need. And sure, maybe the story never came from Seth, and he's just the guy that wrote it, and there was somebody on the actual narrative team who gave the info to him and who came up with it. But if that's the case, I can't give you a name, and I don't even know if that person is still at the company, if they even exist. But yeah, man, I don't know what else to tell you. Maybe Bungie has been keeping the Gardner and Winnower story going this whole time, and they've been intentionally vague and misleading, or maybe they thought the characters and concepts were outdated and boring, and so chose to retcon them in a terribly sloppy way. It could go either way. But don't worry, for better or worse, we'll find out in June. If the final shape comes out and there is no Gardner reveal whatsoever, then consider the whole thing scrapped. All that lore, gone and useless, another dead stump. If this happens, I will say that this is the case, and I will no longer bring up the possibilities of either character existing. But if the Gardener is revealed, then that to me is an automatic reveal of the Winnower, for reasons I've already said, and it's also a justification of my beliefs surrounding Unveiling. So, before we conclude this video, what is my official interpretation of the lore book Unveiling? The narrator of Unveiling is the character we call the Winnower. The arguments made against the Gardener should be taken with a grain of salt, as the Winnower is biased and trying to persuade us. However, the historical account provided in the book, especially concerning the events that happened in the garden, I believe that they can be trusted. I am confident that the OG purpose of the Black Garden has been retconned, but I do believe that the Black Garden was the garden mentioned in Unveiling. The Gardener is a real character. The Winnower is a real character, and either I'm right and they exist right now in the game, or I was right and they have since been retconned. This video is my attempt to end the debate about Unveiling once and for all. I rest my case. This is the conclusion to this video. I've covered probably 90 to 95% of my points here. Literally, there were points still coming at me while I was doing this voiceover, and I was like, dude, man, I want to put these in, but I don't even know where to put them at this point, and I'm already doing the voiceover. There are still some points that I haven't even mentioned, right? But yeah, I've covered the majority of them, and because of that, I am extremely confident about this video. If you can soundly disprove my argument or even just one point, I will thank you, and I will update my position on the topic. I'm not a fanfiction writer who jumps through hoops to make my theories sound legitimate. I am not some keyboard warrior on Reddit who insults others for their opinions while using "Trust Me Bro" as my source. I am Venextron, and I don't care about being right, I care about knowing what is right. And I care about Destiny. Couldn't you tell? If I didn't love this world, if I just wanted to bash Bungie or make clickbait videos, do you think I'd go through all this effort? I wouldn't. And if it ever seemed like I was overly harsh on Bingy, it's coming from a place of passion, I promise. And after writing so much, I don't know what to say, so I'm just gonna leave it at this. When my videos blew up, the last two I made, I was extremely excited. After a long time of making videos, it seemed like my channel had gotten its lucky break. I was eager to take advantage of the situation, become a content monster, churning out videos like a madman. But as I made this video, and I realized how long it was getting, I had to make a choice. Either I could cut the video short, make it into a series, or just save it for later, or I could keep working on it and see it through. There was no estimated or set length for this script, but I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't know if I've shot myself in the foot for not uploading the last while, and the idea that I have thrown the momentum away from those previous videos, it scares me. It does, and I'll just be transparent and say that. But I know in my heart that spending this much time on this video was the right move, for me and for you. So sob story over. If you're watching right now, could you do me a favor? It would mean so much to me if you could like the video and subscribe. I've never asked for support like this, and I probably never will again, but yeah, it is what it is, man. I really hope that this video was worth your time. I hope that you found it entertaining and informative, and dude, I just hope you had fun, man. Thank you everyone who has chosen to stand beside me on this journey. I see you all. And to my two channel members, Detective Studios and Neofly, I am thankful for you, my friends. But with all of that being said, I will talk to you all real soon. Take care, my friends.
Meh.